I'm Joleen Hughes, and I'm with, I started a law firm, a disruptive law firm, over a decade ago called Hughes Media Law Group, and I like to say we're the anti-lawyers because we work with very, very cool clients, and we work very integrated with them, and I think people sometimes often forget we're lawyers because we're so integrated with the teams and help create really effective business models, so that way you don't need lawyers as much, hopefully, especially down the line. So a couple of my very esteemed clients are on the panel, and a couple of really cool other VR companies that have agreed to join us today. And I'm really excited to talk more about the disruptive technologies that are outside the scope and the norm of what you suspect VR technology is. So this is not about me today. It's about these great people up here. So I'm going to let everybody talk a little bit about themselves and how they got into this and their company. And then I will be going through a bunch of different cool questions, and it's very interactive. So if you feel like there's something you have to ask or have to know more about, please make yourself known, because we want this to be as lively as possible on a Wednesday at 9:30 in the morning, after some of you may have been out enjoying the fine hospitality of Seattle last night very late. So without further ado, we'll start at the very end and start with Joe Michaels.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Michaels. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of a company called AxonVR. And we were founded about 5 years ago by a young kid. I say young kid because at the time, to celebrate the founding of the company, he was not legal to drink, is the legend. Now he's about 25, and his vision at the time was for a gaming platform that would enable you to touch and feel the objects in the games you play. And since then, we've grown to something much broader, much bigger, really to become the haptics platform for VR and other aspects of mixed reality, so that you can touch, feel, and move within these virtual worlds. And we're very excited. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer, so I do all the partnerships and business development for the company, and I'm excited to talk about it on the panel today.
Great. Kathie Flood.
Hi, I'm Kathie Flood. I'm the CEO of Cascade Game Foundry, which is a little indie studio in Seattle and Kirkland and all over the place. We're small enough we still all work out of our homes, so that's fun. How did I get into this? I was at Microsoft for many years and worked on lots of disruptive technologies, if you consider Xbox and Xbox launch and even the early PC games at Microsoft. We went out on our own about 8 years ago to concentrate on simulation games. That's been my particular passion, to try to help people explore the world from home. And we're currently, we do a lot of work for other companies, and then our own IP is a scuba diving simulator. And it was a natural fit for VR, but how we got into it, kind of by accident. But it's been so much fun, we can't leave it alone. So.
Great, Ryan.
Hi, I'm Ryan Payton, and I run a company called Camouflaj, located in downtown Bellevue. We've been around for the past 5-6 years. I used to be at Microsoft as well before I was left, or more or less kind of pushed out, fired, / on my own mission. They made it feel like that way.
It's complicated.
It's complicated, guys. No, but it was actually one of the best things that ever happened to me. And kind of got me to think about what I want to do with my career and with my life. And I wanted to make a game studio that focused on making meaningful games that would elegantly integrate kind of narrative content with game design. And we launched our first game several years ago now, called Republic. It was an episodic game that came out on mobile and was kickstarted, and then eventually went to all these different platforms through a very close partnership with Unity. And since then, we've had our own kind of not uncommon in this game industry, but having an independent studio about ups and downs and turbulent times. But just in the past year, we got some interesting kind of contacts and contracts related to creating VR content. And so now we're about 50 people strong, and we're making about 3 unannounced VR titles at the moment.
Great. Todd?
Hi, I'm Todd Hooper. I'm the CEO and founder of VREAL. I guess to answer your question, how did I get into VR? I actually remember trying virtuality back in the 90s, and I was like, oh, this is not for me. But somehow I was actually, I joined Unity a few years ago to set up engineering teams for the services part of Unity. And somehow I ended up with the DK2 on my desk, and I was like, oh, I should try this. Everyone's talking about it. I'd seen the DK1. I ended up taking the DK2 home and sort of tinkering with it, and it sort of started to spark my interest. And it wasn't, a great piece of hardware necessarily, but if you squinted, you could kind of see what the future might look like. And then one day, Chet Falachek from Valve called me and said, hey, you should come over and see something that we're going to announce in 6 months. And I was like, oh. Mm-hmm. When you get a call like that from Valve, you don't say no. So the Unity office is just across the street. I ran over there. I put the Vive prototype on, and within about 30 seconds, I was like, damn. I'm going to have to quit my job and start a company. So I did. 6 months later, I left Unity and I started VREAL. And really what we're working on, just to keep it short, is VR is a big trend. I see a big chunk of the gaming market going to VR over the next 5 to 10 years. If you look at the $100 billion gaming market in 5 or 10 years, a nice piece of that will be VR. It's something that we've been talking about for decades. And the other big trend we've had in gaming in the last 10 years is games have become media, and more people actually watch games on Twitch and YouTube than play games at any one moment. So how do you kind of bring those trends together, and what does that look like?
That's awesome. Well, we'll get it out of the way because the title of the panel is Beyond Headsets, Disruptive VR Technologies. Everybody's asking me, what does that mean? And so, I wanted to sort of bring together a panel of experts that are doing things that are beyond just headsets. And so I want to just go down the panel and find out what you think is the single most disruptive VR technology right now. So why don't we just go back down this way? So Todd, you get to keep going.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen amazing content from people like Ryan. I've seen great technology from Axon. If you haven't done an Axon demo, it's like the Valve moment that I had. It's one of those things like, oh my God, this is like next level. I still am a fairly practical person, so in many respects, I think the content has to drive those things, and we still do not have the killer app of VR. We have a lot of cool apps. The bar is getting better. Like, if you look at VR games on a kind of annual basis over the last 3 or 4 years, the first couple of years, frankly, they were pretty terrible. They were experiments, right? Now you're starting to see teams like, Ray Drifter, they just shipped their game yesterday or the day before. We played it last week in the office. And, this started to feel like a real piece of content. And that's when I start thinking, boy, I wish I had the haptic feedback. I wish I had, some of these other things. But because the market is so early, I think one thing I've learned in this space is you need patience. A lot of Bay Area companies came out very early, hyping VR up really big, spending tons of money. And, that's just not realistic in this current environment. You need to be able to think, these things are coming down the track, but the path to get there is going to be pretty slow. And so you have to have an eye on the future, but also kind of a realistic feeling about, you've got to build the technology that you can today. So that's the way that we've approached it. We've been heads down 18 months building technology. We want to get out in public pretty soon, but I don't feel like there's a rush for us to get it out there right now, because really, even if I had a product that I could ship tomorrow, the maximum amount of people I could get on that product and the headset, on the desktop headsets, is probably 1 million people.
It's funny because I was thinking about, I worked for the company that invented streaming media. I remember when streaming audio first came out, and it was so, everybody, this is the greatest thing, but consumers didn't have the speed to actually be able to experience the way you could in the work environment. So in some ways, I feel like it's similar to that, where you're sort of like, okay, we need everybody else in the consumer products to catch up to what has been invented. What do you think, Ryan?
No, I agree with a lot of what Todd was saying in terms of just being pragmatic, which is tough because, when I go in and check out these interesting technologies that are going on, like including what Joe and his team are working on, it gets us really excited as creators, right? But we also have to be very pragmatic, and we have to create for where the quote unquote masses are when it comes to VR, to try to drive as many units as possible. So we try to keep a very open mind, and I think that the team has these very deep desires about, wow, these experiences could be so much better if we had some of these peripherals, if we had some of these things that are outside of just the headset, or also improved headsets. I think that we have like a laundry list of things that we want and improvements that we want to have. But it's really up to, I think the onus is really on these platform holders, these hardware makers, these companies that are fueling literally billions of dollars into this industry to continue to continue that trend. Hopefully we don't experience this sort of economic downturn, because I think that would actually be a real nasty blow to what's going on right now. Because I think, generally speaking, my thesis is that with VR, we've been really lucky as an industry about how much effort has gone into, in so many different regards, so many large companies really supporting this effort, because I think we all understand the long-term dream of it. And as long as we keep going down this path, I have this really, really strong belief that it might not be in the next year or two, but that like long-term, after the next maybe 2 years, that we'll be able to have some of these more elegantly designed peripherals and other, like, outside of just like the headset experiences that developers like us could justify the budget for or the partnership for to then develop for.
Yeah, that's certainly the biggest challenge, is that you need really high quality assets to deliver a really high quality VR experience. And the games industry, prior to the VR stuff starting to be hot, had shifted to mobile. And your phones are great, but they can't drive the sort of graphics that are going to make a really interactive, compelling experience on a phone that's this far from your face, right? And so that shift has been interesting, because everybody shifted into, it's got to be small, it's got to be fast, I can make an awesome game in 3 weeks type stuff, to, oh no, wait, this is going to take a long time, there aren't good standards. And that's great for us. I mean, it's incredibly inspiring to be able to work on stuff that you've never seen, nobody's ever seen, and to be able to bring really diverse experiences to people that they wouldn't ordinarily be able to have. When I was at Microsoft and we were working on simulations games, there was always this kind of healthy tension between simulation games where you're doing sports or flight sim or train sim or something like that, and there were some people who go, that's not a game, both from the game side and from the simulation side. You're right, that's not a game, that's a simulation. And that sort of vision for, all right, I want to be a pilot, I want to be a diver, I want to drive a train, I want to drive a car. You could deliver that in a flat screen pretty well, but you can deliver it in such a compelling way, a much more emotional way with VR. And so I think all of us see that potential in a way that the old headsets with the crappy graphics that felt like you were wearing a 10-ton weight on your head for the early VR, they just couldn't deliver. You can kind of see it out there, and then the haptic stuff. I mean, you're right back into Ready Player One, right? Like, oh my God, this is real, happening a lot sooner than any of us thought it would. But I think as far as your original question goes, I mean, those are the big challenges. We've kind of gone into this quick and fast, and I want it now. And now we're into something that's going to take a while to get it right and to provide the sorts of experiences that are going to make the install base big enough to support the budgets that are necessary. In terms of content itself, I've been really surprised how the games that I work on, so simulation-specific stuff, we used to get all the time, well, what do you do as a diver? I don't get it. Do you just swim around? Like, well, yeah, that's actually what you do. The ocean's a giant hidden object game. Okay, so, and you don't know what's going to happen. You put the headset on people, they don't ask that. They're just fascinated by it. And they're like, oh, this is great. Oh, I want to go diving in the real world. So the ability to kind of provide empathy for a different part of the world or a different part of the planet that you might not otherwise be able to see is really powerful. That's the thing that I see, that you get more acceptance for things that maybe weren't considered games before. And one of the things we do when we do shows is we do a survey. Are you a gamer? And then just basic stuff about whoever is going to be at the show. And so often we get people go, I don't do games. Nope, I don't do games. And then they take the headset off and they go, if that's a game, I want to change my answer. I'm a gamer. I didn't know. And so the potential to really grow this audience into something really phenomenal and make this a primary means of communication, I think that's the most exciting part of this, and probably the most disruptive part of it in terms of being able to impact a lot of different people in ways that we can't even imagine right now.
Well, what do you think, Joe?
Well, I do think that haptics will be a major disruption in the future, as you've heard the other panelists say. But as I look back over the last maybe 12 to 18 months, the biggest disruption or the biggest revolution for me has been this this growing recognition that 3D objects have value, that 3D objects are important to people. They can be used, in VR and in AR for fun, for ways to be social, for training and simulation and productivity and education. And this idea that it's not just what you can see on a flat screen, but you can be in a 3D world, and there's that you'll want to pay for it, or you want to spend your time, because that's as precious a resource as money, interacting with 3D objects. That is an incredible disruption in the force, to me and to everyone, I think, in the industry. So I'm excited that we've gotten there. Now we need to take it to the next level, as you just heard.
Well, going back historically, Kathie, you're a pioneer, industry veteran. No, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of that way too.
I've earned my wrinkles.
But it's like, but we talked about gamification. It's like you sort of started talking about what the evolution was, but as someone who, you worked on Flight Simulator, for gosh sakes, right? So what's the evolution? And then I'd love to hear, everybody's perception, because everybody comes into gaming at different times. And, yeah.
I'm not, so what's your question?
Just what's your view of the evolution of gamification in VR?
That's a good question. Obviously, anything you can do to actually give somebody the experience of doing something different. I want to be something, go somewhere. The aspects of virtual travel and I keep coming back to empathy. Brett Leonard, the Lawnmower Man guy who did the kind of early VR stuff, he has his 5 laws of VR, in response to the Asimov's for robotics, and it was all about how do you use this power for good. A lot of the early stuff that comes out right now, a lot of the demos are kind of very centered on violence, and that's a little discouraging. But that's, I get it. That's where the money is. So as far as the where I'd love to see us go is how do we kind of harness this power for good, for a change. And that's hard when there are business cases to make and people who are running the books who want a sure thing, a definite thing. How is this definitely going to work? And the games right now that make a lot of money are all something, or not all, but many of them are not necessarily conducive to using powers for good. So I'd like to see that change, and at least based on all the people we've talked to, the reason people don't say they're gamers right now is that the games industry has kind of a bad reputation in terms of excessive violence, even now, or if not violence, then excessive time wasting or emotional manipulation and that type of stuff. So it'd be nice to see some efforts to try to change that. And we have a real opportunity to do some really groundbreaking work. So I'd like to see where that goes.
Can I just jump in and say, I'm glad you mentioned Brett Leonard. The day that Brett Leonard, the director of Lawnmower Man, tried our demo and gushed about it to me was one of the best days of the last 24 months for me. It just, when someone, a pioneer, checks your stuff out, you just feel it rush. And so he's like a hero of mine now. I want to jump on some stuff that you said and address your question, Joleen, because gamification is like one of the powers, the superpowers that I think the people at this conference have. Yep. They know how to create addictive fun. They know how to create the kind of thing where you go in to do something that might otherwise be a drudgery kind of task and make it great. Make it something that you not only want to do, but you want to do again and again and again. You can't stop. And you want to see how your friends did. And I think we have to bring that to VR, by the way. The more we can, and I've seen some of what Todd is doing and some of Todd's partners, experimenting with it. I think that's critical. So I hope that the casual game community will dedicate time to using their superpowers to build repeat usage of VR. Because I think that's one of the missing things in VR today is the fact that very few people pick it up and put it on day after day and return to it, which is something that needs to happen to really grow the market. And so I'm hoping gamification will become woven into the DNA of VR, which it isn't yet.
Todd, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it looks a lot like the early PC games, right? I remember playing PC games. There was solitary, non-social experiences. They were kind of a storyline. Once you played it, you were done. And then when you compare that to modern gaming, they tend to be, definitely social experiences and definitely something that you want to come back to and grow over time. It's not just, when I'm done with the campaign. So VR still looks a lot like those older games just because, as you said, Kathie, it's all new. The technology is new. It's gotten a lot better since, say, 2 years ago when it was every day there was a driver update and things just broke all the time. So it's gotten friendlier, but just in terms of the interaction model, the user experience, everyone has a different way to approach it. I mean, we spend as much time in our office discussing different ways to build interfaces. I mean, I was sure that it was going to be skeuomorphic interfaces, and then now we've gone back to more traditional PC 2D interfaces. You don't know that. So I think what I like about it is that it is this early space. Everyone's trying really good things. No one knows what works yet. I remember, and I've told the story, some of you may have heard it before, but I remember coming to Casual Connect, I think it was in 2011, and I met this Finnish guy called Ilkka who was working on this game on mobile. It was supposedly going to be pretty good, but, he was just walking around. It wasn't like a big superstar. And at the time, the thought was that EA and Activision were going to dominate mobile with their brands. I don't know if anyone here remembers this. And I remember there was Mass Effect you could play on your phone. It was terrible. Sorry, EA. I love that game, but it was a terrible game on your phone. And Ilkka is, of course, Ilkka, the CEO of Supercell, who, a year later should Clash of Clans. So no one saw that coming. No one saw Rovio or King or Supercell coming. No one will see the killer app coming. It's going to be some small studio like Ryan's or an independent developer that's committed to VR that has that breakthrough moment, and then everyone's going to be like, well, that was kind of obvious. Everyone's going to try and copy that. But that's really one of the major innovations that over the next 2 to 3 years, now that they're getting a few million systems out there, that is starting to bubble up, and we just have to be patient. And maybe it will be an environment where people treat better. I think there are better social cues in VR that are lacking in a lot of online gaming, especially the use of voice and the use of motion track people and more realistic avatars. It's pretty easy to be abusive to someone when they're just a little icon on a screen and it's text and you're essentially anonymous. It's a lot harder when your brain is telling you you're standing in the same space as them and you're actually using your voice. I mean, I know that may not be true for Xbox, for example, but I've noticed it brings out the humanity in people, not the bad side of people that we see today in gaming.
Well, now we got to hear from you, Ryan, because this is your wheelhouse.
It's funny, because we have to be really careful because we have 3 unannounced VR titles. But one of them in particular is very inspired by how we've observed early adopters or early users in VR experiment or play or have empathy or lack of empathy in VR, and that's something that I find has been incredibly fascinating. I come from a hardcore gaming background. My favorite VR game this year so far is Resident Evil 7, which is an extremely violent video game. But I think it does a lot of interesting and meaningful things. That being said, I was mortified by some violence that I observed in a prototype that we had created from some biz dev folks that were coming to the office and playing this game and watching them attempt to do some really terrible things. And it got me, and I've also seen the opposite where we had people come through the demo and be very extremely empathetic to this NPC character that we had in the story. And so I thought, well, why don't we just double down on this and actually create a whole game about, not being too preachy about one way or the other, but to give the player the tools to really not only kind of, push the boundaries in terms of what they're comfortable with and not comfortable with, but that also hopefully at the end of the day understand something about themselves through that process. And I think that's something that's really interesting about VR and being almost like kind of like a mirror into what the world is. A lot of my friends get really annoyed when I talk about my lack of interest in violence or making violent video games and my emphasis on trying to emphasize and trying to encourage players to play through games non-lethally. For example, Republic. For example, you can't kill anybody, and it's very inspired by games that allow you to kill a lot of people. And I do think that like to kind of put a bow tie on what I'm trying to say though is that I do think VR is going to be, it's an entertainment medium in a lot of ways, and it's going to be a mirror of what the world is about. And I think we will have lots of violent content from now until the end of time. But I think that the onus is on us as creators to try to broaden the marketplace and try to give players more of lots of different types of experiences, and try to give them an alternative to, guys like me that really enjoy just paying $60 to play and spending 20, 30 hours in VR in Resident Evil 7 in a highly ultra-violent context.
I think the moral of your story, though, is if you want goodness and empathy and behavior that's worth emulating, stay far away from the business development.
That's why we're very small. That's why we still work out of our homes.
We're really all terrible.
I was mortified.
Wow. Well, I mean, switching gears a little bit, I'm just curious as to, from a practical standpoint, we talked a little bit about sort of the path and how long it might take, but I'm really curious as to what you think the most challenging technological aspects are within what you're doing specifically, but also just bringing it to the masses and how we might solve that. So, Todd.
I think there's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of cool stuff like what Axon's doing. I can see that really being, absolutely killer technology in a few years. The big challenge right now is just friction to put the headset on. Is the friction to put the headset on. So, I have a Rift at my desk at the office. I have a Vive at home. And it's just the complexity of the devices is still too high. It's getting better. The price point is still too high. The complexity of setup with cameras and tracking systems and things like that is still too high. And so the friction to put the headset on is high. You can imagine a point in 10 years where VR headsets, AR headsets look kind of like a chunky version of Joe's glasses, basically. That's where we're going to get to. At some point along the road, there is something that is more acceptable to people, but it's still unusual to see someone in a VR headset. They're still uncomfortable to wear. They're still too heavy. I mean, one of the things we consistently have in our office is, especially the people that are of a smaller, lighter build, tend to get a lot of neck strain from the headsets. So it's reducing that friction. Now, we're seeing new headsets from people which I probably can't talk about, but that are lighter. The software is easier. I was complaining to Chet from X-Valve last night. One of my complaints about the Vive is I love the Vive. It's a great piece of hardware, but I have my lighthouses so they spin down to save power, I guess. And it seems to take them about 30 seconds to spin up when I grab the headset. So there's always that little delay of waiting for stuff, and so that we just need to keep working on that. And the great thing about having all these big companies investing into it, HTC and Valve and Microsoft, Facebook and Google, is that they understand that user experience is very, very critical, and they're improving that stuff all the time. So each iteration of headset, I think, gets more comfortable to wear, quicker to install, better price point, and that's the things that would make it attractive to the masses and not just to the audience that we have today, which is really an early adopter audience. We still haven't crossed that chasm into mass acceptance.
Sure. Brian?
For us, everything that Todd said, but also for pure game development, actually a big thing that we find really challenging from a technology perspective is lack of performance. I really hate. Well, I think the biggest thing I hate about my job in video game development is dealing with lack of performance and dealing with game hardware. I find it to be a very creative, stifling aspect of game creation from the very beginning. Like, I've only been in the industry for maybe 10, 12 years, but since day one, it was like, we want to do this thing, but we can't have that many characters on screen, or we can't have this many particles on screen. And just as I felt like the games industry was getting to the point where hardware was starting to get to this point where, hey, do we really need to have a new console generation, or do we really need to have like these really, really, really expensive graphics cards? Then VR comes out, which is a really fun and disruptive technology, and then all of my hardware budgets are cut in half again, and we're kind of starting from there again. So I find that to be a big challenging part of what we do, and again, the team really wrestles with that, and I think we pay like a 30-40% tax per day in terms of just thinking or spending time optimizing code or waiting for features to get online from Unity. I know that Unreal is also investing a lot of time in making this technology a lot easier to work with, but it's just a matter of time. I'm an optimistic person, and I believe that the industry is on the right track, generally speaking, in terms of embracing where VR is headed, and that not only a software solution, but also hardware as well. And so, yeah, that's. But in the immediate future, it's like, hey, just give me more power.
Moore's law will take care of you.
Yeah, I just need Mr. Moore to hurry up.
From also from a game development standpoint, again, there was that shift to mobile where everything got small, and it's just a completely polar opposite platform in terms of what you need in terms of assets, the high resolution of the assets, great performance, and so you need a much bigger budget to do that, and it's at a time when games went free. Oh, okay. So at least there seems to be more of a tolerance for paying for VR experiences right now. So that's encouraging. But I think anything that's new, there's this kind of, it's new, it's shiny, everybody wants it now, they want it cheap, and it'll be interesting to see what shakes out, because everybody, even though we don't know what works, everybody says they know what works, and so we're just in this kind of nebulous time where it's going to filter down to how many people can actually survive to do this, because it's a really different sort of development environment than a lot of people who grew up building mobile games can even begin to assess, right? If you're working on a AAA game, then you've got some concept of how to manage a budget and a schedule with discipline, like grown-ups, and actually put in the time that you need to iterate properly to be able to respond to different performance issues as changes happen. You get a new update and it breaks you all the time. That's par for the course on any sort of new platform. But in order to really deliver that fantastic experience, it takes extra time, extra iteration, and there's not necessarily a great history in the immediate past to tolerate those sorts of changes and the budgets that are required to accommodate that. And one of the big problems we have when we do custom work for people on who are new to this, I spend a crazy amount of time doing basically software development 101 with people. Here's how you build something, and no, you don't get something in 2 weeks. Okay, and just kind of the basics of, no, you have to be really disciplined about this. It takes a while to get to where your vertical slice is. You've got to test that properly. You've got to respond. Whatever partners you're working with, they're going to have their own requirements as well. So it's almost like it's ramping back up. Everything's on a pendulum, but definitely when we went to the free-to-play mobile stuff, that sort of development environment and attitude doesn't necessarily work in something that takes a long time and much bigger budgets and much bigger teams and much more discipline to actually deliver. So.
Well, when it comes to haptics, I think it's fair to say that every part of it is really challenging, is really complex and difficult.
Does everybody know what haptics is? Does anyone not know?
So haptics is the addition of touch to virtual reality. So in other words, and that's my definition of it. It's having things that you see in front of you and you can hear even, but you reach out and you want to use your real hands or your body to interact with them, and you can't because they're just bits instead of atoms. You expect them to be touchable and feelable, something you can interact with. So haptics, it's something like what you have in your phone or your game controller when the car crashes in the game and the controller rumbles, and that's supposed to make you feel like you've just been in a car crash. And that illustrates, I think, just how big a gap there is between what haptics is today and what it needs to be, what it could be. So we make wearables. We make the kinds of things you can put on your body, and when you're in VR or when you're interacting even with AR objects, you can touch them and feel them, and when they land on you or you grip them or anything like that, the things that are out in front of you feel realistic. And so every part of that is challenging. There's sort of three challenges, super briefly, that my engineers would tell you about. The software challenge. The cool thing is that NVIDIA has created this amazing physics engine, so the objects in VR have physical properties. They're physically simulated. So if you throw up a ball, it sort of lands the way a ball should, and that's automated. And if it's a cube and it bounces on the corner, it sort of rolls the way it should. And so we're able to use that to make it easier for us to calculate how it should feel. That's not easy. The other thing is just the actuators, the things that deliver the sensations on your body. That's hard. That's the hardest part, I think. And then the one that I find the most interesting is the human-machine interface challenges. This is what my engineers say all day. Human-machine interface, it's hard. So once you've got a wearable, how to get it to stick to your body in the right ways. And when you move through space, how does it go with you and how does it give you freedom of motion without losing fidelity? Everything's a challenge. And so I bow down to the engineers who are way smarter than I am and do this stuff every day. But we're working at it. We just got a big ass patent in May, for our technology, which is exciting.
Awesome.
So we're on it.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most fun aspect of it then? What's the most challenging? What's the most fun? Joe, just keep going.
The funny thing for me, I don't know if you guys see this, but I can't tell whether I blow people's minds when I let them try my demo because of my tech, or because for half of them it's the first time they've ever tried VR.
No, it's your tech. It's on VR. I'm telling you right now. It definitely blew my mind.
Yeah. So many.
A dragon landed on my hand and breathed fire, and I could feel it. I was just mind blown.
Yeah. That just letting people in on this secret that it's not impossible to let you feel things realistically in a computer generated world. That's a mind blower. That is fun. This is sort of a dark topic, but they say that suicide rate is super high among dentists because no one wants to be there in the dentist chair, and they have to live with that every day. I'm like at the other end of that scale. I get to do VR demos, every day, and haptics demos. So it's just great fun. Also opening people's minds when you're a platform, and you just say, hey, here's a tool. How would you use this? And then just getting people's minds spinning. It's great. I love that. And I've got a long list of, as soon as we have products in the market, we can get people to start using these tools to touch and feel VR.
The most fun part for us is just seeing how people react. And again, a lot of people, this is their first VR experience. But I've been really surprised in the diving world. There are a lot of people who come up and go, "Oh, I dive in the real world. I don't need to do this." I'm like, "Oh, well, please do it anyway, because we want to know if we don't have something right, what can we do to improve it?" And they put it on and go, "Oh, wait a minute." I mean, they just really have no concept that how different it is and how much people can engage. And so we work with a lot of people in the scuba diving industry who have taken our pre-release stuff, and we didn't intend to release it at all, but they're already using it because it shows people what it's like to be in the water, and makes them want to get in the water for real. Or if they can't, if they've got health issues or whatever, they can't go diving, this is a way for them to fulfill that dream. And it's just really amazing to watch people. I've worked on a bunch of different games, and people will, they get done playing and they go, "That was awesome, thank you, that's great." But when they take off the headset after the VR dive, they sit back and some of them have tears in their eyes. And they'll say things like, "Well, congratulations, oh my gosh, that's..." Like, I've never seen that as a reaction to what I do before. I mean, it's really touching when it's people who can't go diving, people who are handicapped or old, or kids. There are so many kids who have no, even though they live in Washington, they've never been to the coast. They have no idea what's in their own waters. And that's here, that's in my state, or this is on the other side of the world. Being able to show them an experience that they couldn't have otherwise is unbelievably gratifying. And I want to think that all these we do a ton of school outreach, and we make our conventional game and the VR available in any school that sends us mail. So we did that from the very beginning. And to see them react so positively to it, and then come up with their own ideas, I'm just hoping, those are the people who are really going to be doing amazing things with this, because the tech will be much further along by the time they're able to work in this space. So it's such a cool experience. If you told me that I would be this excited about my job when I'm this old, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I am.
Yeah, I have two things. One is the kind of the delight that I get to observe every day, but not just from people that come in and check out our work, but actually from the team's perspective. What VR has done for team morale over the past 12 months, I think, is unbelievable. In fact, I was pretty certain that even though we have a very, very, very thankfully very low attrition rate, like people leaving the company, I think that it would have just skyrocketed if I wouldn't have agreed to moved the company in a direction of taking on VR because guys were just so excited about working in that space that it was either I'm going to do it here at Camouflaj and you're going to let me do it, or I'm out of here because I need to work on this stuff that's just so exciting and so fun to work on. So for me, that's really, really fun to observe. And then secondly, I'm obsessed with the games industry. Just before this panel, these much smarter people were talking about the history of Seattle and all these famous people that are associated with Seattle, and I didn't know any of those people. I don't know anything except the video game industry.
You gotta get out.
And I don't care. I don't feel like I'm missing anything because this is such a fun place to be. And in that context, though, is that I think this is one of the unique times where studios and younger companies can be really competitive in a space because these larger companies need us. I think it's interesting that, like, for example, I'm just making this up, but whenever Sony announces the PlayStation 5, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be putting up, they're going to be calling Bungie, or they're going to be calling, Rockstar, or all these Square Enix, and all these hundreds of millions or billion-dollar companies to make demos for them and to come on stage and show off this new hardware. Whereas when it comes to VR, for a lot of interesting reasons that we've already kind of brought up in this panel, these companies and this hardware needs smaller studios to be innovative. We're in a really interesting way. We're making a pretty hardcore, AAA type of like experience in VR, and we don't have to compete with like a Bungie down the street because right now the economics of them going into VR right now doesn't make any sense. So now we can be like what Todd was saying is like we have at least the opportunity to be the next big players in VR. That's what we want to be. Or just like what was going on with the smartphone and like the mobile games industry. The winners of the mobile game industry are not the winners of the previous generation when it came to just hardcore PC or console games. So for me, that's incredibly fun. Again, as like kind of a fake historian of the video game industry, this is exactly what I want to be.
What's not to like? I mean, working in entertainment, I'm the CEO. I sit down next to someone playing one of you. I'm the CEO of a virtual reality gaming company that is like, I love the fact that exactly what you guys said is just. I mean, at some point I lost count of how many demos we did, but we've done at least 200 demos in our old office when we moved out of there a year ago. With trade shows and that, we're probably approaching like 1,000 private demos, and just that look in people's face, whether they've never done VR before, so it's just that whole mind-blowing look. I mean, I remember a friend of mine is the CEO of Avalara, Scott. He's it's a sales tax compliance company. Great guys. I actually helped him get started. But I was like, taxes is not really my thing. And he came into the office, and he's super skeptical. Lovely guy, very skeptical. He's like, "Is this like 3D TV? I've got one of those. I'm not interested." I said, "Just put it on." 45 minutes later, I'm trying to get the headset off this guy. So I love that fact that people totally, will go for that. The other thing that's been really big for me is just social parts of VR. In VREAL, you meet other people and they have fully tracked avatars and you can interact with them and you feel like you've actually been in the same space with them. And we've actually had a lot of things where we do remote demos, people be in California and then they'll come up to the office, sometimes investors and that, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is Lizzie. Oh yeah, I met you in VREAL. I recognize you and I recognize your voice and the way you move, and it's not, you were a panda or a robot or something in the game, in the lobby, but they had that immediate social connection. And that actually happened to me. I met two young guys. There was a very early social VR thing called Converge. Some people might remember it. And I met the founders in VR, and we just hung out quite a bit. And there were two young guys, and they were kind of looking for advice on how to build a company. And then I met them in real life, and I convinced them to move to Seattle, and they lived in my basement for 3 months while they found a place to stay. So, it's the connections that you can make in the virtual world can cross over to the real world in a good way.
Well, I have a million other questions, but I got the little 5-minute thing, so I want to make sure before I put any others out there, is there anyone that has questions?
Your last comments segue perfectly to my question, which is when you're dealing with, because VR is such an immersive experience, have you found that dealing with character-based stuff helps kind of get past that sort of uncanny valley thing, or does it make it harder? And what are the challenges in that area?
It's interesting. One of the things that I guess I've learned obviously you look at CGI over the last 10, 20 years and look at games and avatars have been getting more and more realistic. It doesn't actually matter. Like, your brain does not need a lot of data to understand this as a human. It can be a blocky character that's Minecraft-ish, low poly, but once I hear your voice and I see the emotion that it's mocap, real human being, it's not programmed, and you appear to be interacting with me, add a few little things like eye blinks and mouth animation, and that's it. I'm convinced that's a person. And we notice that immediately. I mean, you even notice like social behavior, like people will start to form up in a circle like they would in real life to speak. You occasionally see people that don't get that, and I wonder if those people are sociopaths, frankly, because you do see some people that don't get the social cues in VR, and that's actually interesting as well. We've definitely noticed in demos we have some people that don't seem to be able to focus or anything like that. Maybe they're just overwhelmed. But majority of people, once you put some realistic characters in, it doesn't matter what sort of crazy world they're in, they immediately focus on the people and start to have a social interaction, which is awesome.
Yeah, so this is probably a question that almost any of you could answer. And it's connected to something you said, Todd, where you said if you release like a product today, you get maybe like maximum 1 million people as an audience, which I think is probably like an upper limit. Last week, Old Space VR closed down, and it just got me thinking about timing, right? So when you get new platforms, like the wisdom is like it's good to be like a prime mover. It's good to get in there early. And is VR a platform where it was actually kind of a bad idea to get in there early? Because what happened with Old Space seemed to be that they had a good app. They had actually been downloaded quite a few times, had a good amount of daily active users, but like the money just ran out before the market was there to support what they wanted to do. So I don't know, potentially not for you with haptics, but all three of you, if you could give perspective on that, whether the market exists yet, whether this is the right time versus 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Edge, right? I mean, that's the chance you take anytime you're working on something new. We don't know yet. It's going to take a while to shake out. We made a decision when we started the company. We knew that this wasn't going to be easy. This was prior to doing VR. VR was just another step in that it's not going to be easy, but we feel strongly enough about it that we want to do it. And if you are really going to do it, like grown-ups, then you've got to accept the fact that you are not going to have money coming in for a long time. I mean, are you willing to live like a college student in order to get this dream fulfilled? Because if you're not, probably doing an indie startup is not your thing. And there are a lot of people who they're not a good fit for that, and that's fine. But that's what it comes down to, because we don't know. And to me, that's one of the fun things. I want to work on things that aren't fully formed. I don't want to know what I'm going to do when I get up in the morning. I want to know the direction I'm going to go, but I like the idea of solving crazy new problems all the time. And some people are well suited for that, and some people aren't. Some people want very clear direction. They want to know exactly how much money is going to be coming in and on what date. I'm not one of those. But you have to plan for that, because nobody wants to go broke doing what they dream of doing.
Yeah, I mean, Old Space there's a lot of reasons why that company, no disrespect to Eric, those guys are super early. I mean, that company got started in 2013, so years before the commercial release of VR. They'd spent a lot of capital, 40-person company in San Francisco, very expensive. I mean, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Bay Area mentality can be a lot of sprinting. And then you've got Facebook and people like that coming in with social options as well. But again, this is the creative destruction of capitalism. For there to emerge a Supercell and a King and a Rovio, other companies must fail. And one of the beautiful things about living in this country, which I appreciate every day, is I can do this company, and it completely fail in a year. You might come up and say, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your company. What are you going to do next?" And in a lot of countries, you don't have that option, right? I mean, everyone from Old Space will get a well-paid job in Silicon Valley, and they'll go and take that knowledge on to other companies, and VR will continue. So I don't think you need to look at it as a binary situation. In my case, it's definitely it's definitely a lesson, and definitely need to pace yourself.
Thank you very much. That was a really great panel, actually. A wonderful start to our second day of Casual Connect. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.